Hey all, this is Reddit Tosker. We've got to talk about this Armored Core and Elden Ring leak that happened recently. I'm a little late covering this, so it's not exactly news. Ziostorm's channel did a pretty good breakdown of the leak, and I didn't think it was necessary to add anything to that. But I've been mulling it over, and I have some thoughts I want to get out there. So first of all, for people that don't know what I'm talking about, I'll do a recap. There was an article titled Armored Core 6 has a September-October release window. The article claims that sources have revealed that the developers have a planned release window that falls between September and October, and that a September release is the more likely of the two, with October only happening if there's some kind of internal delay. The article cites unnamed sources, and it goes on to say the following. Additionally, it was disclosed to me that From Software wants to get Armored Core 6 out before releasing the Shadow of the Ertree expansion for Elden Ring. Now before we discuss the implications of what was just said, we need to talk about the credibility of the source. While the source on its own doesn't seem very credible, it is corroborated by Jeff Grubb, a very well-known insider. Now Grubb doesn't always hit the mark, but he's been too correct too many times to ignore outright. So given his willingness to outright say that the story is accurate, I'm willing to go with it for the moment. It's about as reliable as these kind of leaks get. Now as to the implications here. The important bit here isn't really about Armored Core. I think a September release date falls in line with most people's expectations. I'm excited for that, I can't wait for that. I'm eager to see what the gameplay looks like. But that's not what matters. The important bit in this article is the suggestion that From Software wants to wait until after Armored Core is released to release the Shadow of the Ertree expansion. Because that is a long time, and is quite different from what From Software normally does. In most other cases, when they announce DLC, they will give you a release date with that DLC, and the release date's always something like 2 months after the announcement. But they didn't give us a release date this time when they announced the DLC. And if this article is accurate, then that means that we're not going to get a DLC for at least another 8 months minimum. And it might even be much longer than that. If they release Armored Core in September, late September or early October, then I know that a lot of the Souls community, and many Souls YouTubers are going to be playing Armored Core 6 at that time on release. From Software must know that, and I don't think that they would want to release the Elden Ring DLC too close together to the Armored Core 6 release. They would want a little time to pass. If they released it too close together, inevitably some people would have to make tough choices. They'd have to decide whether they're going to get one or the other. Successive releases would force YouTubers like me to allocate resources away from covering Armored Core 6 and into covering Elden Ring DLC. I'm sure there's a large number of both content creators and just players that would have to make tough calls as to where to allocate their time and attention. And if From Software sees it the same way I'm describing, then that means it's very possible we won't see an Elden Ring DLC until next year. If Armored Core comes out in September, then a February release for the DLC the following year is pretty reasonable. Which of course is crazy. That would mean that they announced the DLC a full year before they intended to release it, and 2 years after the release of the main game, which is unprecedented. No other Souls game did anything like this. And you know, I also think that the marketing for the DLC will be minimal. I think we're about to go months without hearing anything about the DLC. And when we do hear something, I think it will be sparse. And I think it will remain that way until after Armored Core's release, when they're ready to ramp up their marketing. Now, assuming that that leak is accurate, then this DLC is going to be massive. It's going to be enormous, being by far the longest From Software has ever worked on a DLC. This isn't going to be your typical $20 DLC. You're going to be paying $40 for this, at least. A lot of people have taken note that From Software used the word expansion to describe this DLC, and while there's no rules as to what constitutes an expansion and what constitutes a DLC, it's true that the term expansion is often used for things that are substantially larger than your typical DLC. Now, I'm not thrilled about having to wait another 10 to 12 months for this expansion, but I'll wait quite patiently if it's going to be as big as I'm thinking. And frankly, there's a lot going on game-wise this year. So if anything, I'm relieved that it's not going to intrude on my time with Tears of the Kingdom or Armored Core. But anyway, that's the end of this video. Let me know if you have reason to think that we're going to get the DLC before my predicted time frame. And as always, thank you very much for watching.